Hi, this is Cheryl Gallant, your Conservative Member of Parliament for the Will You Be My Valentine riding of Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke. The Church of Climate Socialism has introduced its first blasphemy law. High Priest Charlie Angus wants to ban the promotion of oil and gas. Sorry, ban is the wrong word. Liberals are the ban-happy party. No, what Charlie Angus and the NDP want is to criminalize the promotion of oil and gas. For example, if you were to be hired by an oil company, then go on social media and say how much you love the money you're making in your new job, you could face 6 months in jail or a $500,000 fine. If you work for a charity which received a donation from a gas company, then go on social media and say you're switching from an oil furnace to a gas furnace because burning gas emits less carbon than burning oil, you could face up to 6 months in jail or a $500,000 fine. It should frighten every reasonable Canadian when the climate cult wants to jail people for just stating a scientific fact. The climate cultists are claiming this is about false advertising. That is false advertising. Canada already has laws against false advertising. In fact, a collection of oil and gas companies is being investigated by the Competition Bureau right now for claims they made false advertisements. Even the bill itself contains disinformation. It claims climate change will lead to the extinction of the human race. The Church of Climate Socialism needs people to be afraid to keep them in the cult. That is why they engage in climate hysteria. That's why they seek to ban opposing views. This climate hysteria is having a serious impact on the mental health of young people. Reverend Charlie says this is just like banning tobacco advertising. Tobacco ad bans were justified on the basis of health. Maybe it's time to criminalize climate hysteria. Speaking of hysteria, listen to how this Canadian press reporter behaved at a recent press conference with Pierre Poilievre.
Why did your party want to grant over $100 million in regulatory relief to the mainstream media?
We don't want to give any tax dollars to the mainstream media. Our belief is that the mainstream media and all...
Decision, then? Your party's decision to grant regulatory relief?
So I'll answer your question. The media that is bought and paid for, where are you from, by the way? Which outlet are you in? Which outlet? Which outlet?
Canadian Press.
Okay, Canadian Press. So you're talking about tax dollars for media. Isn't CBC your biggest? Isn't no? I can answer.
I asked regulatory.
Yeah, and you want to answer?
Why does your party want to grant $100 million in regulatory relief to the mainstream media?
When would you like me to respond? Okay, good. Okay, great. So, of course, you are a tax-funded media outlet and spreading Justin Trudeau's message.
Why did you
and so you're interrupting me again. You're interrupting me again. I am answering the question.
Do you regret granting $100 million in regulatory relief to the mainstream media?
Your question is false. So, if you can allow me to correct your falsehoods, then we can answer the question directly. So, false. Canadian Conservatives do not believe in giving tax dollars to media outlets. That's Justin Trudeau. That's Justin Trudeau. That's Justin Trudeau. Okay, if you don't want me to answer the question, I'll move on to someone else. You're a tax-funded mouthpiece to the PMO. That's the reality. So,
question answered. You committed.
I'm trying to, but you're heckling. Are you going to let me answer the question, or are you just going to heckle on behalf of Justin Trudeau? Which is it?
I would love the answer.
Great. So our party does not support tax dollars for media outlets, because that's when we end up with biased media like you, who come here and articulate the PMO talking points rather than delivering real news to the Canadian people. Justin Trudeau gave Bell Media and other media tax dollars supposedly to protect media jobs. And then what happened? They all got laid off. So that the supposed justification for giving Bell all this money was that it was going to save media jobs. Well, they all got fired. So I guess that wasn't the real reason for giving tax dollars to the media. The real reason was for him to buy support from the media, which is what it actually did. So we believe that media should be driven by readership, viewership, and listenership. And that's what allows it to represent the Canadian people rather than taking marching orders from the PMO.
Monsieur Poilievre, la vérificatrice générale ne mentionne.
When Pierre said the reporter was repeating Liberal talking points, he was not exaggerating. Here's the tweet from the Liberal Minister for Montreal Heritage from Friday. The minister is claiming that Conservatives are the reason Bell is laying off journalists because Conservatives supported a motion to reduce taxes on Canadian broadcasters. Then on Monday, you get the Canadian Press reporter screaming that the Conservatives gave $40 million in regulatory relief. That's the problem with the Liberals and their radical woke allies in the media. They think letting a business keep more of its own money is the same as giving that company your tax dollars. But let's set aside the issue of the Liberals and their media allies thinking they are entitled to your money. What the minister is saying makes no sense. Basically, this Liberal/Canadian Press conspiracy theory says that letting Bell keep $40 million is the reason the company is laying off workers. If anyone can explain that kind of Liberal logic in the comments, I'd appreciate it. Well, I can't even get into the minds of these Liberals. Canadian Press lapped it up. One thing people may not know is just how much the once respected Newswire service has fallen. As regular viewers may remember, the legacy media have a far-right problem. If you are watching Global News or reading the Globe and Mail, you are 3 times more likely to encounter a story with the words far right than the words far left. On the CBC, it is 4 times more common. On CTV, it's 5 times more common. But the Canadian Press is determined to make those outlets look fair and balanced by comparison. On the Canadian Press website, you are over 1,400 times more likely to encounter the words far right. How far left has the Canadian Press fallen that everywhere they look, all they see is far right? Speaking of having a distorted view of the world, I think the Liberals are trapped in the matrix. The Liberals and their media allies keep repeating the same talking point. They keep saying that 80% of Canadians get back more in climate bribes than they pay in carbon taxes. They even point to a Parliamentary Budget Office study which says that 80% get more back. What the Liberals never mention about the study is that it said once you add in the HST charged on the carbon tax, 60% of Canadians are paying more in new taxes than they receive in climate bribes. But the Parliamentary Budget Officer also says in the study that he used the Statistics Canada Social Policy Simulation Database and model to arrive at those figures. The Social Policy Simulation Database and model takes census data and tax data to produce a very detailed and accurate model of what Canadians pay in tax. But the last time you completed your tax return or a census form, you never told the government how much you drive or heat your home. So, to include that kind of data, Statistics Canada uses a survey, which means that survey has a margin of error. Notice how the media never mentions that when repeating Liberal talking points. The fact is, there are people who make very little money and pay the full carbon tax, while others who make good money pay no carbon tax and receive 100% of the climate bribe. In fact, it's very likely that 20% of Canadians pay zero carbon taxes, while the other 80% are paying all the taxes. No simulation can replace the real world and the 40 million unique Canadian lives. It's time for the Liberals to wake up to reality. Speaking of sleeping Liberals, it appears every Liberal minister was asleep at the switch when millions of dollars were being funneled to one company for doing no work. On Monday, the Auditor General said the Arrive scam scandal was even worse than Canadians could have imagined. She says the record-keeping around the Arrive Can app was so poor, she can't even tell Canadians how much it actually cost. Today, La Presse is reporting that the company at the center of the scandal, GC Strategies, has received over 140 contracts from the Liberal NDP government worth $258 million. This company was founded in 2015, the same year the Liberals were elected. This really looks like the sequel to the sponsorship scandal. For younger viewers who may not recall the sponsorship scandal, also known as ad scam, it saw the Liberal government award large contracts to Liberal-friendly advertising firms who did little work, then kicked back money to the Liberal Party. The minister responsible for the department involved in the sponsorship scandal was Alfonso Galliano. Rather than call for him to resign, Chrétien appointed him to be Canada's ambassador to Denmark. In other news, Justin Trudeau recently announced he was appointing former Liberal Carolyn Bennett to be Canada's next ambassador to Denmark. And speaking of terrible Liberal ministers, unrepented criminal and proud socialist Stephen Guilbeault has announced that the NDP Liberal government will no longer fund the construction of new roads. The minister did not announce this radical new policy in the House of Commons. The Liberals never told Canadians about this radical policy during the last election. No, this news was dropped by Guilbeault at a fundraiser for a public transit lobbyist organization. He was actually giving a speech about how electric cars won't solve the climate crisis. He said government must move people out of their cars and onto public transit. Since the Liberals now oppose electric cars, why are they committing $45 billion in subsidies for electric car batteries? Batteries can't even be built without the critical minerals, and we can't get at the critical minerals from new mines in Northern Ontario to factories in Southern Ontario without new roads. It'd be interesting to hear from the housing minister how he plans to get new homes built if no new roads can be added to the existing road network. Many Indigenous communities in Northern Ontario are not even connected to the road network. Were they consulted before learning they would be kept in isolation forever? Of all the radical policies this government has pushed down Canadians' throats, this one might just be too hard for anyone to swallow. If this is now official Liberal policy, then Conservatives have questions. Tune into Question Period to find out what the Liberals have to say. Live from Ottawa, this is Cheryl Gallant.